I need to start by saying I grew up in northern Minnesota, where winter isn't just a season, it's a lifestyle. I'm talking temperatures that drop to -30, snow that starts in October and doesn't melt until April. By the time I was 14, I'd been snowmobiling since I was 8 years old. I knew those trails better than the roads in my own town. This happened in February of 2019. I was 17 at the time, and my best friend Tyler and I had planned to take our snowmobiles out on a Saturday afternoon. The forecast called for light snow, nothing we couldn't handle. We'd done this route dozens of times. It was about a 20-mile loop through state forest land, with a warming house at the halfway point, where we'd usually stop for hot chocolate and to charge our phones. We left around 2 p.m., which gave us about 3 hours of daylight. The first half of the ride was perfect. Fresh powder, clear trails, and barely anyone else out there. We stopped at the warming house around 3:30. There were a few other people there, mostly older guys, serious riders with expensive gear. One of them struck up a conversation with us, asking about our sleds and where we were headed. He seemed friendly enough at first, mid-40s maybe, wearing all black gear with a bright yellow helmet. He mentioned he was riding solo and asked if he could tag along with us for the second half, since he wasn't familiar with this particular trail system. Tyler and I looked at each other, and something felt off about the request, but we didn't want to be rude. We told him we were planning to ride pretty fast on the way back, and he should probably stick with the slower group that was heading out in a few minutes. He nodded and smiled, but I noticed his expression changed, not angry exactly, but something in his eyes went cold. He said that was fine and wished us a good ride. We left about 5 minutes later, and I remember looking back as we pulled away. He was still standing there in the doorway of the warming house, watching us leave. The sun was already starting to drop lower when we got back on the trail. About 15 minutes into the ride back, I noticed something in my mirror. There was another snowmobile behind us, maybe a quarter-mile back, moving fast, really fast. Tyler saw it too and signaled to me. We both sped up a bit, thinking maybe someone just wanted to pass us. But the rider behind us sped up too. They stayed exactly the same distance behind us no matter how fast we went. Tyler and I were both getting nervous now. We were in a pretty remote section of the trail, dense forest on both sides, no houses or roads nearby. I signaled to Tyler and we both gunned it, pushing our sleds as fast as they'd go. The rider behind us matched our speed perfectly. Then I saw them pull something from their jacket. At first I thought it was a phone. Maybe they were trying to signal us or something. But then I saw a flash. They were taking pictures of us while riding at 60 miles per hour through the woods. This person was photographing us from behind. Tyler saw it too and started panicking. He veered off the main trail onto a narrower path that we sometimes used as a shortcut. I followed him. The rider behind us followed too. This path was barely wide enough for one sled, with trees close on both sides and several tight turns. Most people wouldn't know about it unless they rode these trails regularly, but this person knew exactly where they were going. They navigated every turn perfectly, never falling behind. Tyler's sled hit a bump, and he almost lost control, but he managed to stay upright. The path eventually merged back with the main trail, and we came out near a road crossing where there was usually a trail patrol station. The station was there, but it was closed and dark, no one around. We stopped anyway, hoping maybe the rider would pass us or give up. Instead, they stopped about 50 feet behind us and just sat there on their sled, idling. The sun was setting now, that weird blue twilight that makes everything look surreal. I got off my sled and started walking toward them, planning to ask what their problem was. As soon as I took a few steps, they revved their engine loud and started driving straight at me. Not fast, but deliberate, menacing. I scrambled back to my sled and we took off again. This went on for another 10 minutes. Every time we slowed down or stopped, they'd do the same, always staying behind us, always watching. We finally made it to a section of trail that ran parallel to a county highway. I signaled to Tyler and we both jumped the embankment onto the shoulder of the road. It's illegal and dangerous, but we didn't care at that point. We rode on the shoulder for about 2 miles until we reached a gas station. We pulled in and immediately ran inside. The clerk could tell something was wrong and asked if we needed help. We explained what happened and asked if we could call the police. She said absolutely and handed us the phone. While I was on the phone with the dispatcher, Tyler was watching the parking lot through the window. He suddenly grabbed my arm and pointed. The rider in black had pulled into the gas station parking lot. They sat there on their sled for a moment, then slowly drove past the front windows. Through the tinted visor, we couldn't see their face, but I swear they turned their head to look directly at us through the glass. Then they left, just rode back out onto the highway and disappeared. The police showed up about 20 minutes later and took our statements. We described everything, including the yellow helmet and black gear. They asked if we could identify the make and model of the sled, but we honestly couldn't. It looked generic, nothing distinctive about it. They told us they'd patrol the trails and the warming house, but they also said without a license plate or clear identification, there wasn't much they could do. They suggested we file a harassment report, which we did. Then Tyler's dad showed up with his truck and trailer to load up our sleds. We never found out who it was. But here's the thing that still bothers me. About a week later, I was looking through photos on my phone and found something I definitely didn't take. It was a picture of the back of our house, my house, taken from the woods behind our property. The timestamp showed it was taken the day after the snowmobile incident. My phone had been in my coat pocket the entire time we were being chased. The only way that photo could have gotten there was if someone had accessed my phone at the warming house when I wasn't looking, which means the guy who asked to ride with us had gone through my phone, found my address somehow, and then followed us on the trail, and then came to my house the next day. I showed the photo to the police, but they said it wasn't enough evidence to do anything. We moved out of that house 6 months later for unrelated reasons, but I was secretly relieved. I still snowmobile, but I never go out without at least 3 other people, and I never stop at that warming house anymore. My name is Vanessa, and I'm 23 years old. I live in Denver, Colorado, and I'm a graduate student studying environmental science. This happened last December during one of the worst blizzards we'd had in years. I'd been at the university library studying until almost 11 p.m. I have a really bad habit of losing track of time when I'm working on research papers, and that night was no exception. When I finally packed up my stuff and headed outside, I was shocked by how much snow had fallen. The parking lot was completely buried, and my car was covered in at least a foot of snow. I tried to start it, but the engine wouldn't turn over. The battery was dead, probably from the extreme cold. I didn't have jumper cables, and there was no one else around. The campus was basically deserted because of the storm. I checked the bus schedule on my phone, but the last bus had stopped running an hour ago because of the weather conditions. I was about 5 miles from my apartment. Normally I'd just call a friend, but everyone I knew had already hunkered down for the storm. I didn't want to ask someone to drive in dangerous conditions just because I'd been careless about the time, so I decided to use a rideshare app. I put in my request and waited. It took almost 15 minutes before anyone accepted. The app showed a driver named Marcus, 4.9 stars, had accepted my ride. The estimated arrival time was 12 minutes. I waited in the library entrance, watching the snow come down in thick sheets. Visibility was terrible. A dark blue sedan pulled up eventually. I checked the license plate against the app. It matched. I ran out through the snow and got in the back seat. The driver was a man, maybe late 30s, wearing a heavy winter coat and a beanie. He didn't say much, just confirmed my name and the destination address. The ride started normally. He drove slowly because of the road conditions, which I appreciated. We made small talk about the storm and how bad the roads were. But after about 5 minutes, I noticed we'd turned onto a road that wasn't part of the route shown on the app. I mentioned it to him. He said the main roads were too dangerous and he was taking an alternate route that he knew was safer. It seemed reasonable, so I didn't push it. But then he turned again, this time onto a road I didn't recognize at all. We were heading away from the downtown area where I lived. I asked where we were going. He said again that he was just avoiding the worst roads, but his voice had changed. It was flat, emotionless. I pulled out my phone to check the route on the app, and that's when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The app showed my ride had been completed 10 minutes ago. According to the app, I'd already been dropped off at my apartment. I looked at the driver's profile picture in the app. It was a completely different person, younger, different race, different everything. The person driving me was not Marcus. This wasn't even the right car. I'd been so focused on matching the license plate that I hadn't checked anything else. I asked him to pull over. He didn't respond. I said it louder, telling him to stop the car immediately. He kept driving. I reached for the door handle and tried to open it. The child safety lock was on. I was trapped. I started screaming at him, demanding he stop. He finally spoke. he said very calmly. "I'm taking you somewhere safe. The roads are too dangerous. You'll freeze if I let you out here." I told him I'd called the police and they were tracking my location. It was a lie, but I was desperate. He laughed and said, "No, you didn't. There's no service out here. Check your phone." I looked. He was right. No signal. We were in some industrial area I didn't recognize, miles from campus, surrounded by warehouses and empty lots. The snow was coming down so hard I couldn't see more than 20 feet ahead. I tried to stay calm. I asked him what he wanted. He said, "I don't want anything. I'm helping you. You're safe with me, safer than you'd be out there." He gestured to the blizzard outside. I asked where he was taking me. He said, "Home. My home. You can stay until the storm passes. Maybe longer if you like it there." The way he said it made me feel sick. I realized this had been planned. He'd been watching for lone students leaving campus. He knew about the storm, knew people would need rides, knew the rideshare services would be overwhelmed. He'd probably been circling the campus waiting for someone exactly like me, someone alone, desperate, not paying close enough attention. I started thinking about what I could use as a weapon. I had a heavy textbook in my bag, keys in my pocket, a metal water bottle. We were stopped at a red light, even though there were no other cars anywhere. I decided this was my only chance. I unbuckled my seatbelt, grabbed my water bottle, and smashed it into the driver's side window as hard as I could. The window cracked, but didn't break. He shouted and grabbed my arm, but I was already moving. I hit the window again, and this time it shattered. The freezing air and snow rushed in. I didn't think. I just climbed through the broken window, cutting my hands on the glass, and dropped into the snow-covered street. I ran. I didn't know where I was going, just away from that car. I could hear him yelling behind me, the car door opening. I ran between two warehouse buildings into what looked like a loading dock area. There was a dumpster, and I ducked behind it, trying to catch my breath and figure out what to do. I heard footsteps crunching in the snow. He was looking for me. I stayed completely still, my hands bleeding and throbbing from the cuts, my face numb from the cold. The footsteps got closer. I saw his shadow on the wall. He was right on the other side of the dumpster. Then I heard something that saved my life. A siren. Police or ambulance. I couldn't tell, but it was close and getting closer. The footsteps in the snow suddenly stopped, then they quickly moved away. I heard a car door slam and an engine rev. He was leaving. I waited until I couldn't hear the car anymore before I came out. I was shaking uncontrollably, my hands still bleeding. I found a main road and started walking, not even sure which direction I was going. After about 20 minutes, I saw lights from a 24-hour convenience store. I stumbled inside and the clerk immediately called 911. I was treated for minor cuts and hypothermia. The police took my statement, but I couldn't give them much. I didn't get a good look at the license plate. I'd been so stupid. The rideshare company investigated and confirmed that no driver named Marcus had been active in that area at that time. Someone had created a fake profile, somehow intercepted my ride request, and targeted me specifically. The police said this was part of a pattern they'd been tracking, several similar incidents across multiple cities. Someone using storms and bad weather to target vulnerable people using rideshare apps. They never caught him. The security cameras at the convenience store captured me arriving, but they didn't show where I'd come from or any vehicles. I had to get 15 stitches in my hands from the broken glass. I still have the scars. I don't use rideshare apps anymore. I'd rather walk 5 miles in a blizzard than get in a stranger's car. And I always check the driver's face against the photo, not just the license plate. That detail almost cost me my life. I've been ice fishing with my dad since I was 6 years old. It's always been our thing, just the two of us. Every winter, we have our spot on Lake Superior, about an hour north of Duluth. Remote, quiet, great fishing. We'd set up our shanty, spend the whole day out there, and it was some of my favorite memories growing up. This happened 3 years ago when I was 19. My dad had been diagnosed with early-stage Parkinson's disease the year before, and the doctors said he should stay active and keep doing the things he loved. So when January rolled around, we planned our annual ice fishing trip, like always. We drove up to the lake on a Saturday morning. It was cold, probably around 15 degrees, but not bad for Minnesota in January. We hauled our gear out onto the ice, found a good spot about half a mile from shore, and set up the shanty. It's basically a small portable shelter with a heater and holes drilled in the ice floor for fishing. By midday, we caught a few decent walleye and were having a great time. The shanty was warm, we had sandwiches and coffee, and my dad was in good spirits. Around 2 p.m., I stepped outside to use the bathroom. There's no facilities out on the ice, so you just walk a little ways from the shanty and do your business. That's when I noticed another shanty that hadn't been there before. It was about 200 yards away, red and white, much bigger than ours. I didn't think much of it at first. People set up and take down shanties all day, but something about it seemed off. It was too far from shore, in an area where the ice could be thinner, and it was angled weird, like it had been set up in a hurry. I mentioned it to my dad when I came back inside. He looked out and said he'd noticed it too, maybe an hour ago. He said he'd seen someone moving around it earlier, but hadn't seen anyone since. We went back to fishing and didn't think about it again for a while. Around 4 p.m., as the sun was starting to set, we heard something. A voice, someone shouting from outside. It sounded like they were calling for help, but it was hard to tell with the wind. My dad and I looked at each other, and he told me to go check it out while he packed up some of our gear. I put my coat on and went outside. The voice was coming from the direction of the red and white shanty. I started walking toward it, calling out to ask if someone needed help. The voice stopped. Everything was quiet except for the wind. I got closer to the shanty and called out again. No response. The door was facing away from me, so I walked around to the front. The door was closed. I knocked and asked if anyone was inside. Nothing. I tried the handle, and the door opened easily. Inside, the shanty was empty. No gear, no heater, no fishing holes, just an empty shell. But there was something written on the inside wall in what looked like charcoal or black marker. It said, "Help me. The ice is breaking. I'm drowning." I backed out of the shanty, my heart racing. This didn't make sense. If someone had written that, where were they? And why write it inside a shanty instead of actually calling for help? I looked around at the ice. It was solid. No cracks, no thin spots, no water anywhere. I started walking back to our shanty when I heard the voice again. This time, it was closer and more clear. It was saying my name, my actual name. "Ryan, Ryan, help me. I'm drowning. The ice broke." I stopped walking. No one out here knew my name except my dad. I looked back at the red and white shanty. Through the small window, I could see movement inside, but I'd just been in there. It was empty. I ran back to our shanty and told my dad what I'd seen. He looked concerned and said we should leave right now. We started packing up quickly. That's when we heard it again. But this time, the voice sounded exactly like my dad. It was calling my name from the direction of the red shanty, using my dad's voice perfectly. I looked at my dad. He was right next to me, and he wasn't talking. His face had gone pale. He said very quietly, "We need to get to the truck. Now. Don't look back, and don't respond to anything you hear." We grabbed what we could and started pulling our sled back toward shore. The voice kept calling. Sometimes it was my dad's voice, sometimes it was mine, sometimes it was my mom's voice. It was saying things like, "Wait for me," and "I dropped something, can you come back?" and "Help me, I fell through the ice." We kept walking. My dad was moving as fast as he could, but his Parkinson's made him unsteady on the ice. I stayed right next to him, holding his arm to keep him from falling. The voice followed us the whole way back, always staying the same distance behind us. When we were about 100 yards from shore, I made the mistake of looking back. The red and white shanty was gone, just completely gone, but there was someone standing where it had been, a figure in dark clothes, too far away to make out any features, just standing there watching us. We made it to the truck and loaded our gear as fast as possible. My dad's hands were shaking so badly he couldn't get the key in the ignition at first. Finally, he got it started and we drove away. Neither of us said anything for the first 20 minutes of the drive. Eventually, my dad pulled over at a gas station. He looked at me and said, "I need to tell you something." That wasn't the first time. He explained that the same thing had happened to him once before, 25 years ago, before I was born. He'd been ice fishing alone and heard voices calling for help. He'd found an empty shanty with writing inside, saying almost the exact same thing. He said he'd never gone back to that spot on the lake until today. He thought maybe it was just stress or his imagination, but now that I'd experienced it too, he knew it was real. He said there were old stories about that lake, Native American legends about something that lived under the ice, something that could mimic voices and lure people out onto thin ice where they'd fall through and drown. He said he was sorry for bringing me there, that he'd convinced himself those stories were just superstition. I asked him what he thought that thing was. He said he didn't know, but he was certain it wasn't human. The way it could appear and disappear, the way it could perfectly mimic voices it shouldn't have known, the writing that appeared in an empty shanty. We never went back to that lake. My dad and I still go ice fishing, but we stick to smaller lakes closer to home, places with lots of other people around. I've tried to research those legends he mentioned, but I can't find much. Just a few vague stories about fishermen who disappeared on Lake Superior during the winter. Their bodies never recovered. What bothers me most is the writing in the shanty. I'm drowning, not I'm going to drown, or I might drown. Present tense, like whoever wrote it was drowning while they wrote it, or like they're still drowning, even now, trapped under the ice, calling out to anyone who'll listen, trying to drag someone else down there with them. I don't know what we encountered that day. I don't think I want to know. All I know is that if you ever go ice fishing and you hear someone calling for help, make sure you can actually see them before you respond, because sometimes the voices on the ice aren't coming from people at all.